Many of the best investors in the world are extremely well known through interviews and public appearances, but one of the greatest investors of all time is hardly known at all. I visit Omaha every year to listen to Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's lectures, and the man who manages $15 billion and has generated almost 30% per year was sitting quietly 2 rows back. His name is Li Lu.
But who is he, and why do you need to know him?
Charlie made Li Lu an even better investor.
Li Lu has one of the most interesting backstories of all the investors I've studied on this show.
His story of being hunted by the Chinese government, fleeing to the United States, stumbling into a Warren Buffett lecture, and becoming an investing genius is incredible. It's a story everybody should hear, and it's also sprinkled with investing lessons for those trying to find success in the stock market. So here is the story and investing philosophies of China's greatest investor. A quick shout out to Shortform for sponsoring the video. Their super in-depth book summaries are my favorite way to learn the best ideas fast. My recommendation is their summary on the essays of Warren Buffett, my favorite book, or browse their huge and growing library across many genres. Don't miss out on a free trial and a 20% discount on your subscription by heading to shortform.com/Hamish. Li Lu was born on April 6, 1966 in Tangshan, China. It was the beginning of the Cultural Revolution. Communist dictator Mao was pushing to eliminate any shred of capitalism that remained in the nation.
This generation of Tiananmen was born in the darkness of a cultural revolution.
The year Mao died and his reign ended, the city of Tangshan was hit by a 7.6 magnitude earthquake. 85% of the buildings were destroyed, and it's estimated more than 300,000 people died. Li Lu was among the survivors. He was just 10 years old at the time. Looking back, that devastating natural disaster in 1976 was very symbolic of the seismic shift happening in the economic and political landscape in China. It was the beginning of many iterations of capitalist reform that has led to the much more prosperous country we see today. But just like China itself, Li Lu's journey to becoming one of the most successful investors of all time was extremely difficult. He attended Nanjing University in 1985, first majoring in physics before transferring into economics. In his 4th year, he participated in the ill-famed Tiananmen Square protests. The student-led movement began after the death of a pro-reformist member of the CCP, Hu Yaobang. China's economy was growing rapidly, largely due to economic reforms such as increasing foreign trade. But many believed that the growth was disproportionately benefiting a small group of people, while those at the lower end of the socioeconomic scale were continuing to suffer.
And that was the time of hope for the entire nation, for this young generation. It is a dream, but of course it's also fear.
The CCP installed martial law using the military to shut down the protests. Many innocent protesters and bystanders were killed. Some estimates put the death toll in the thousands.
So people who participated would have to face, one way or the other, severe persecutions.
Lu's role in the protests made him one of the most wanted students by the Chinese government.
You say once you're on the Chinese most wanted list, your name and pictures began to appear all over, on the radio, television, train station, and bus station, on the street.
Lu went into hiding, fearing harsh prosecution from the Chinese government. While being hunted, he was able to connect with a smuggling network which was helping students escape the country.
So I never thought I could escape. And then I was approached while I was hiding with people from both inside and outside China. They said they're organizing an extensive network to rescue people.
He needed to apply for political asylum, but many countries, including the United States, were refusing to take students.
France was the only country at that time that accepted us. So we all went to France.
After fleeing to France, he was able to migrate to the United States, moving to New York to study at Columbia University. The first 23 years of Li Lu's life were filled with difficulties that I couldn't even begin to imagine. So he well and truly deserved some luck on his side, and he got it. Liu had received some scholarships to attend Columbia, but he still accrued large debts to receive his education. One day, when pondering ways to make some money, a classmate said to him, "If you want to know how to make money in America, there will be a speech at the business school that you must hear." Knowing nothing about the lecture, he walked in and sat down to learn about investing. A friendly 63-year-old man stood in front of the small audience and introduced himself as Warren Buffett. At the time, Buffett was already a billionaire from his incredibly successful investing career, but he was far less famous than he is today. And over the course of the lecture, he broke Li Lu's preconceived notions of the stock market as a place of ruthless and crooked behavior.
Looking back, I feel I'm extraordinarily lucky, and I feel nothing but gratitude. I feel lucky to accidentally step into Buffett's lecture at your class, basically.
Buffett wasn't talking about stocks like a typical hedge fund manager from Wall Street. He didn't view stocks as ticker symbols and prices on a screen to be traded, but rather ownership pieces of businesses that should be accumulated over time. Liu's investing journey started that day in 1993 with a fundamental idea: intrinsic value. Buffett claimed that stocks acted differently depending on the time scale. In the short run, prices bounced around all over the place, reflecting minor shifts in investor expectations. The collective decision-making of thousands of buyers and sellers focused on economic outlook, the business environment, or even the political landscape. But over the long run, stock prices trended towards the intrinsic value of the underlying business. Ironically, the concept wasn't Buffett's original idea either. He learned it from his Columbia University professor, Benjamin Graham. Graham is known as the father of value investing. He described the market dynamic by saying that in the short run, the market is a voting machine, but in the long run, it's a weighing machine. Short-term volatility of stock prices meant it was possible for an investor to buy a stock for less than it's worth, and to make money as the price trended back towards its true value. Intrinsic value in the case of stocks is derived from the profitability and the net assets of the business. Or in other words, theoretically, if you owned the whole business, how much cash could you pull out of that business over its remaining life? The relatively simple concept fascinated Li Lu, and he became obsessed with studying the investing journeys of Warren Buffett and his investing partner, Charlie Munger. When he graduated in 1996, Liu had already earned phenomenal returns by applying the principles.
Here was a guy who was on student loans. He had no money. And on the float of the student loans, which is, he would get the money in, January, maybe he has to pay it in April or something. He said he would invest the float of the student loans. And when he graduated, he had $1 million.
Not only was he spending countless hours researching and analyzing companies, but he also earned his bachelor's in economics, an MBA, and finished law school all at the same time. He then went straight into the investment banking world, working for 2 years while continuing to invest his own money. In 1998, he decided it was time to try running his own firm. So he founded Himalaya Capital right at the beginning of the Asian financial crisis. The meltdown started in Thailand. Huge foreign debts forced the country to unpeg its currency from the US dollar, causing it to collapse and the economy along with it. The pain spread to other Southeast Asian countries and then to Japan and South Korea as their currencies collapsed too. Stocks across Asian financial markets fell in a meaningful way, and this was Li Lu's opportunity to invest in businesses below intrinsic value. He describes investing in the shares of what he considered to be great Asian companies.
Great businesses are the ones who really have above average returns on invested capital.
What makes a great company is in essence the same as what makes a great investor. It's able to invest money into assets and produce lots of profit in return. The problem is that if one business is able to do it, why couldn't other businesses competing against it just replicate what they have? And this is where the concept of the economic moat is really important.
Truly good business is the one who can fend off competitors, who can really have enduring competitive advantage.
The business needs to be able to produce high returns on capital, but also be able to defend those returns from the many other businesses competing against it. This is called an economic moat, some kind of characteristic about the business that can't be replicated by competition. Running shoes are all pretty similar at a basic level, so why does Nike sell far more than its competitors? Well, it's because it has something that they can't replicate: the Nike brand, the history, the cultural and social significance that make their shoes more desirable than other brands.
Each time is different. You have to really look for each specific company in specific ways.
No two companies or industries are the same, so you need to get good at figuring out which elements are important in each case. And this is particularly the case when it comes to management.
Well, in a lot of the companies, the management will make big differences. The culture that the management will produce will make a big differences. But in the small set of experiences, management really matters almost nothing.
One of the most important things that Li Lu figured out is that you need to be both a generalist and a specialist at different stages of the investing process.
Well, in a sense, you always want to be a generalist in terms of a student of businesses. But by the time you really get into the companies you really decided to invest, you really better become a true specialist.
Have a broad interest that allows you to scan many types of businesses, and then a willingness to become an expert in the few areas you ultimately decide to invest in. Going back to the Asian financial crisis, Lu found some companies he considered to be high quality and was able to buy them far below intrinsic value because the crisis had pulled everything down. In his first year running Himalaya Capital, his fund lost 19%, but he held on to his bets. Within 2 years, the suffering Asian economies received bailouts from the IMF and China, and as the economies recovered, Lu's investments surged in price. Investing through this crisis gave Lu a deeper understanding of risk. The traditional finance industry believes the biggest risk to the investor is volatility, but the truth is that the biggest risk is permanent loss of capital. If the underlying business behind the stock is strong and there's very little risk of it going out of business, then price movements on a week-by-week or monthly basis are completely irrelevant. In fact, not only is volatility not a risk, it's also an opportunity to own great businesses at better prices. Unfortunately, his clients didn't see it that way. Lu's poor short-term performance led many of his investors to take their money out of his fund. They couldn't grasp the idea that the short-term prices didn't reflect the long-term value of the companies that he had bought with their money. It's the fundamental problem with the traditional finance industry. Lu would find the solution to his problem through his friendship with Charlie Munger. He'd been Lu's mentor from afar for years through the lessons he and Warren Buffett shared each year at the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meetings. During their first in-depth conversation in 2003, Munger said it was the same problem that he had faced himself when running his own investing partnership a few decades back. The solution came down to the structure of the fund. Find clients and only work with clients who are willing to be locked into long-term contracts so they can't withdraw money during periods of poor performance, and then most of the time have your doors closed to new clients so you don't have this constant need to find new investing opportunities to invest that new money. Lu did just that, even receiving investment from Munger himself. And his performance since then has been astounding. Himalaya Capital earned 36% per year returns net of expenses from 2004 to 2009, and from 1998, when it was founded, to 2010, the firm grew investor money 20 times in size. Today, Lu manages almost $15 billion in assets, most of which is invested outside of the US. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the greatest investors of all time, consider hitting the subscribe button and check out one of these videos next.